Gear 5 came out over a month ago now, and that was one of the biggest moments in anime and One Piece history. Now, I'm a former One Piece YouTuber, and rumor has it I was the greatest One Piece manga analyzer of all time. So everything I say is correct. So with that being said, before you go to the comments and you're like, what the fuck? Talking about, stupid hater, of course it lived up to the hype. Gear 5 is undisputably one of the most hype moments in anime history, mainly because of how long One Piece takes to do anything. But seriously, seeing Luffy turn into the embodiment of freedom was incredible, and seeing the reaction from manga readers as it was coming out, as well as seeing anime watchers, it was nothing short of special. From chapter 1044 to episode 1071, it was really something. But there was a lot of people who didn't like all the changes, and there's some clear plot holes as well as a complete shift in the vibe and dynamic of the story that a lot of people just can't stand. But there's a lot of controversy to get through, and the three main questions we're going to be thinking about as we progress through this video is number 1 is going to be how it affects the larger story and what does it mean for the lore of One Piece. Number 2 is going to be does it fit One Piece as a whole and does it really make sense within the confines of the story. And number 3 is of course how it affects Luffy, and this is the main point, how his character is after the fact. Then of course at the end we will finally be able to put to bed whether it was overhyped or not. Moving into the story implications, so this is going to be primarily focused on foreshadowing as well as actual implementation and to see if it makes sense within the lore. Foreshadowing in One Piece is a lot stranger than other shows. Most shows it's like, yeah, that thing you saw 30 episodes ago, this is what it's building up to. Or it's like, yeah, that character that side-eyed earlier, he's actually the main villain of the arc. In One Piece, it's like, yeah, that thing you saw 800 episodes ago, that actually means Luffy has his own type devil fruit. He's the second coming of Joy Boy, who's the embodiment of freedom in this world, and it all ties into the Void Century. A lot of Oda's foreshadowing style, I would describe like this. He drops something earlier in the story, and he thinks maybe he will use it, maybe he won't. And if he chooses to use it, it's a spectacular foreshadowing, and if not, it was just a random throwaway line. The big reason, and also my biggest theory that was proven wrong, when it came to Luffy and the resin fruit theory. And I know. In case you have no clue what I'm talking about, there's a substantial amount of evidence pointed towards explaining the gears and Oda's interviews that say Luffy's fruit is actually a resin fruit and not a rubber fruit. Point being, with Gear 5, one of the key points of foreshadowing is the silhouette in Skypiea, foreshadowing Luffy and Nika. And the reason it matters, if Oda really had planned out Gear 5 from the beginning. Honestly, if you go down that line of thinking that Oda is some mastermind genius that planned this out from the beginning, it would essentially mean that Shanks is the biggest dumbass in the world, because it was half implied, half not, that Shanks knew what the fruit was. And if that's the case, what was his, like, why did he just leave it on the table? Like, it just doesn't make sense. He left it open, like, you know, everything that Who's Who was saying, it's up in the air. And also the Gorosei, like, Jesus Christ, like, I don't care. This is the stupidest shit I've ever seen. If they knew the whole time that Luffy had the Gum Gum, and he is literally pulling up to Marineford, like the Hulk in Avengers, and he's on every Bowner poster in the world, like, what the fuck are we talking about here? Of course they knew. Like, how are you gonna say that they didn't know what fruit he had? Like, what? Like, come on. With Oda style, he could always write in an explanation for the story in his half retconny style. That being said, before you dislike the video and cast me out, there are some good story moments in my eyes, particularly with the Void Century and those tie-ins. The whole reincarnation thing we'll talk about later, but I really like Zunisha recognizing the heartbeat, as well as the fact that seemingly Joy Boy had the same fruit, we think. Of course, we didn't get much on it besides those implications, but I see a lot of lore connected to Nika and Joy Boy and Zunisha that's going to be really interesting and really tie in a lot of loose ends. So whether it was foreshadowed or not is up in the air, but implementation was not great. But that being said, the lore implications are pretty awesome. Number 2, does it fit into the story of One Piece as a whole? And I mean this in terms of tone. Now, of course, One Piece is a funny pirate anime. Okay. Obviously, One Piece makes a lot of jokes and stuff all the time that are genuinely funny, and there's been a lot of fights that have already been goofy, from Water Luffy to Nightmare Luffy. That's a throwback. Nightmare Luffy, everybody be sleeping on him. Luffy Chibi, it's definitely been goofy, but literal Looney Tunes is a bit wild. To be honest, I flip on it at some points. It's like, this is beyond unique, seeing Luffy fling around like a little kid that just got his Kool-Aid, but at other points, it's like Kaido's literally imprisoned all these people for decades and tormented them and killed them, and now it's getting wrapped up with this Looney Tunes fight. You know what I'm saying? Although those goofy moments did happen, it's not like they really went into the final sequence. Most of the time, they built up to the final sequence. Like with Water Luffy, and then when they went underground, it was this very serious fight with Crocodile. Even though the final punch from Luffy wasn't particularly goofy, the whole build up to it was, I would say overall, it's a negative if it wasn't for this fact though. The limitations of Gear 5 and clearly foreshadowing his death with the overuse of Gear 5 solves it for me in a lot of ways. Like, first of all, he looks like beyond dead here. And also, side note, him restarting Gear 5, like, oh my god, Jesus Christ, that is what it's all about, man. That scene was epic. That really does tie it all together for me, and it makes it feel like there's still stakes due to there being such a heavy downside. And besides fights, like, this is gonna be epic when they're just chilling on the ship, doing what Straw Hats do, and there's so many options and fun things you can do to make Luffy goofy in Gear 5 and making fun of people. Like, I just see them driving everyone crazy. It's gonna be really wholesome when we get a full, just like, travel episode. All in all, I would say it fits enough in the story, and there's upsides and downsides, but I think the good outweighs the bad. Moving on to Luffy as a character, and this is where it's gonna get real. Is Luffy overpowered? Is Luffy the chosen one? Is everything Luffy did in the past meaningless? Let's go. Is Luffy overpowered? Yes. Like, really, yes. Like, seriously, like, what the fuck, man? Besides the Yonko Admirals and Mihawk and Dragon, and we don't even know how strong Dragon is yet, it's clear that Luffy is stronger than everyone else. We even see at the end of Wano, Green Bull pulls up to Wano and Luffy doesn't even care. He's just sitting there like, man, you a bitch for real. Like, I ain't even gotta get up. I ain't gotta do nothing. I'm gonna just sit on my chair. I'm gonna see how Yamato and Momo throw hands with you. And honestly, is Fujitora stronger than Luffy? Not gonna talk about manga stuff, but you know, like, you know. Say Luffy isn't overpowered is like saying Messi isn't better than Ronaldo, or saying Black Clover isn't a Naruto clone, or saying Pokemon's cookies aren't overpriced. It just doesn't make sense. Luffy is of course overpowered, but it's the end game of the story, so I don't think it really matters at this point. It's time for Luffy to beat the best of the best, and don't worry, in Two Piece, when Doofy comes along, he's gonna be overpowered from robot alien power, and all of a sudden Luffy isn't gonna be overpowered anymore, so we don't gotta worry. Is Luffy the chosen one? And this is where it gets really dicey, man, and honestly, I think he is. Like, no, this isn't on some Yami and Yugi stuff, but Zunisha literally talks to Luffy as if he is Joy Boy. And I know some people are really debating the dialogue as well as arguing what does fate and destiny mean in One Piece and so on, but long story short, it's up in the air and no one really knows. Was Luffy always going to be Joy Boy? Did Luffy work hard and prove himself that then Joy Boy mode like activate? Kinda like I was saying earlier, Oda probably left this up in the air and he feeling out the temperature. He trying to see what we're all thinking, and he's probably gonna write in some dialogue later to say he isn't the chosen one, but as of right now, it's really up in the air, and it would be really terrible if Luffy was the chosen one. Like, Jesus Christ, that does not sound good in any capacity. It does play into the next point as well as his past feats. If he always had the fruit and he was the chosen one, does it even matter all the hard work he did to beat all of his villains, knowing that he had a really crappy devil fruit? Now, there is some dialogue implying that the fruit doesn't activate until it awakens, but it still isn't fully confirmed, and like, one of the main reasons everyone loves Luffy is the fact that he had this piece of shit devil fruit that somehow made it work in order to achieve his dreams and overcome all obstacles. If he did have this fruit, it takes away from everything that happened in the story to this point. That being said, a lot of those questions are up in the air. There is so much good from it too. Like, it perfectly fits Luffy's character. This is the perfect ability for Luffy. There's nothing better than giving a character that wants to be free a fruit that allows him to become the embodiment of freedom, and everything is based off his creativity. Not to mention, all of the fights can go anywhere now. These fights can be crazy, absurd, out of this universe. There is no limitations on Oda or Luffy, and that's what makes it great. So all in all, I would say the jury's still out on how it affects his character. I hope a lot of these questions we have are gonna get answered and we can calm down. So was Gear 5 overhyped? Did it live up to the hype, or has it ruined One Piece? The answer is, honestly, I would say it did live up to the hype. If say living up to the hype was like a 7 out of 10 or an 8 out of 10 based on whatever your expectation was, I would say it's just a slight notch above that. It came really close to being mediocre, but I think it is enough to the point where you could say that it did live up to the hype. I mean, the animation was incredible. I think watching One Piece, you're always looking for that feeling of being transported into another universe where you don't even understand, where you just want to live in the world and be completely immersed in it. That's what Gear 5 Luffy does. You still have those feelings you have when you're watching One Piece, like you're watching your friends. Like, Luffy is someone you know, the Straw Hats are someone you know, and you're just watching them go on this journey and seeing them overcome all these obstacles, and you still have that. One Piece still has that same special energy to it. Even if Luffy is now overpowered, I think it just puts into perspective how far our characters have come. And yes, the lore tie-ups aren't great. Can you even expect it to fit into the story this well? It's over 1,000 episodes. Like, give the man a break. He might not have thought of it, but like, Jesus Christ, it works enough, and more stories have done more bullshit than this. So I don't even think you can get that mad at it. So the fact that he's kept the integrity of the story and you still feel that special One Piece energy is incredible. It was never gonna be perfect. There's no way way to pull something off like this and not have some questions to be answered. At the end of the day, Gear 5 has elevated One Piece and elevated the viewing experience. I think all in all, I don't think there's many people that would say it has ruined the story for them in any capacity. So if you agree, let me know down below, and check out this video on One Piece vs Jujutsu Kaisen. Let's see which one is anime of the year. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, and don't forget, we're just getting started, we're gonna stay consistent, and I'll see you in the next video.